Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this morning's digital event, The Future of Data Services for the Digital Enterprise. This event is brought to you by Sandz Solutions Philippines in partnership with Yugabyte. So before we get started, my name is Mimi Melehor. I am a sales director of Sandz Solutions Philippines, and I will be acting as your host and moderator this morning. Okay, some few house rules and reminders for everyone. This session is being recorded. To facilitate this event, we have temporarily placed all the participants on mute. However, if you have any question, please feel free to drop them on the chat box, or you can click the raise hand button so we can call on you to ask your questions live after the speaker's presentation. You can also opt to send your questions to me directly or to the Zoom host, Sandz. Okay, so we encourage everyone to please stay until the end of the event. We have exciting quiz breaks later. So participants can have a chance to win a special prize, not to mention the early bird announcements, and 3 raffle items are up for grabs at the end of this event. Okay, so again, good morning, and let's officially start this morning's digital event, The Future of Data Services for the Digital Enterprise. Okay. So modern application architecture give enterprises a competitive edge, enabling them to deliver new customer experience and business processes quickly and cost effectively. But pre-cloud databases are poor fit for these native applications. Traditional relational databases force trade-offs between performance, scalability, cost, and freedom from lock-in. Sandz Solutions Philippines has partnered with Yugabyte to provide organizations a platform that gives clients the simplicity and support to deliver private database as a service at scale. We have experts on the call to help us give an idea on how organizations like yours can execute this. So first, on our pool of experts is the Professional Services Group Director of Sandz Solutions Philippines, Mr. Kendrick Chan. Kendrick has a decade-long experience in the industry and has strongly advocated in helping organizations transition towards the digital age. Hello, Ken. How are
Good
you?
morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning,
I'm
Ken.
good. Thank you.
Joining us is Mr. Dennis Shea. So Dennis is the head of sales for South Asia at Yugabyte. He works with enterprises across Southeast Asia and India to use technology and methodologies to enable them to deliver business outcomes and a compelling digital customer experience. Dennis has over 20 years of IT experience in South Asia region and held key positions in several organizations such as IBM, Sun Microsystems, Oracle, Simplivity, Pivotal, and VMware. Hi, Dennis.
Mabuhay everyone. Good morning.
Kumusta ka dyan?
Yeah.
Okay, so we also have on the call with us is Vish Fanindra. So Vish is responsible for leading the solution engineering and customer success organization for cloud native initiatives in the APJ region. With over 18 years of experience, Vish works with enterprises to embrace the digital future so they can win in a software-driven economy. His mission is to enable enterprises to achieve greater business agility and innovate at startup speed by pairing modern agile methodology with next generation cloud and AI technologies. So prior to Yugabyte, Vish was with VMware, Pivotal, EMC, and started with Green Plum at its inception in APJ. Vish holds Masters in Computer Applications from the University of Madras, India. Hello, Vish.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Well, so I won't keep you any longer. Here's Ken Chan to discuss the future-ready solutions for the digital enterprise.
Thanks, Mimi. Let me just pull up my screen. Right. All right, good morning. So everyone can see my screen and can hear me clearly. All right, so for this morning, I'd like to discuss, how Sandz helps you and how Sandz enables your technology to be future ready, especially in this day and age, with all of this, pandemic and all of this disasters that have occurred. So we want to be able to make sure you guys are also equipped, and Sans is also here to help you get equipped and prepare you for anything that may come after next. Okay. So I'd like to start my presentation with a very quick infographic I'm searched over the internet. Right, it's all about digital transformation. You've heard about this throughout different vendors. I'm sure Mr. Shea during his limelight with the other vendors and other companies have discussed this also. So this is an ongoing discussion. Digital transformation is here. We've talked about this a lot, but the question is, we don't know when it occurs, when it will happen, when something gets triggered, or any event, any pandemic can trigger a drastic change in how we deal business, how we deal infrastructure, technology, and how we just interact with people. Perfect example of this is just the recent pandemic with COVID-19. So when this launched last year, when the COVID strike struck last year, right? So we were on our toes. We don't know what to do about it. Do we go home? Do we work from home? Do we try to do a hybrid approach? So this is really a perfect example of a certain uncertain disaster occurs that allows us to be drastically changing the way we handle business, how we handle our information and our data. So having that concept of digital transformation, from infrastructure to be more cloud, to be more agile, etc. So it's there. The problem is, and the challenge that we face with clients is they have challenges where to start. How do we go about this? How do we change? How do we process all of these changes? At the end of the day, it's digital transformation, not only just the technology that's underlying, but it's also how we adapt and how we actually eat up those changes and how do we maximize those in our advantage, right? So just a quick description, or just a quick numbers from 2020. So we've searched over different marketing institutions just to come up with how data and how technology has eaten our world. So definitely with the start of the pandemic, we were able to communicate 4 billion people or interacted with 4 billion people across the globe. Different opportunities for revenue in terms of technology, in terms of how we do businesses. There were 25 million applications that was derived from last year, 25 billion embedded systems, and 50 trillion words of data. So with the splurge and with the boom of advances in technology, you have your on-premise infrastructure, you have your cloud computing, you have public, you have private cloud. You have the people who want to be able to consume different services, different applications at a different scale. So if we look at the business standpoint where we were a couple of years ago to where we are right now, everything is data driven. Everything is consumer driven. It's your consumers driving the business's requirements. It's your consumers accessing your GCash, your mobile payments. It's consumers actually buying food from Grab or buying food for Food Panda. So if you notice the trend, everything has become digital. So all of those applications, all of those services will generate data, will generate services, and will somehow require us to be very, very agile, be very flexible in where we actually host, where we actually put our data, so to speak. So cloud has been there. Cloud computing has always been our go-to strategy. If you just want to spin off instances, we just want to, spin and just, create infrastructure anytime we need them. But of course, when we go cloud, there's always that concern of where does my data sit, or where does my data actually go? Security compliances technically has concerns with cloud, although that has matured throughout, as we speak now, that has really has matured. So gone are the days that we can't go fully cloud. But what's going to be the sweet spot between consumers, between the companies and the organizations trying to build all of these services for the consumers? So we think that the de facto or the the approach will always be in a sort of a multi-cloud or hybrid cloud approach, where you just don't put everything on-prem, you just don't put everything on cloud, but you have to maximize all of the resources that you actually have, whether that be on the cloud, whether that be hosted somewhere else, whether that be hosted within your data center. The important thing here is that we give the services to our consumers. We give back to those who actually use and eat our services. The consumers generate that revenues for us. The consumer generates the power of the business. So it's up to us also to make sure that we prep up all of our infrastructure, all of our data, and all of our application services to be able to carry to that market where they will start with one, two, or even go to 1,000, millions, or billions eventually, right? Consumers doesn't really mind where your application runs. Your consumer doesn't really mind where my data goes. For as long as the service is up, the services is running, I'm okay. There's no churn, there's no going to be problems, etc. So that's really what we wanted to actually say on that one, right? So just a couple of buzzwords that you can see here. I'm sure you've also heard this discussed within the businesses, within the IT industry as well, within your presenters, as well as here in the call. People have really, tried to be out there and trying to advance with the technology as well. You've heard about monolith to microservices. You heard about infrastructure or scalability. Heard about stateless, serverless, cloud compliance, open source. Everything that you've seen in this text or in this chart or in this image that we see right now, you've heard about this, and at some point you're going to consume any of this eventually. Some of you might have consumed it now. Some of you might still explore. But Sans, with here with Sans and together with Yugabyte, we've tried to come up and try to hand that sweet spot wherein we want to be able to give the customers back what they actually need, what they actually want to achieve, and what they actually want to achieve in the future by giving them something very flexible, very agile, very future proof, and very flexible. Right. So we talk about this modernization as a service internally with Science together with our partners and some of our customers here in the call who have joined us with our previous webinars. So we call this modernization as a service. The reason why we do as a service model is because we want to make sure that the businesses and our partners, the customers in this case, you guys in the call, just focus on what's really important is really, generating more businesses towards organizations you work with and trying to maintain all of that infrastructure. So we want to be able to come in, help you with that area, deliver something that's future proof so that you don't have to worry about churn, you don't have to worry about end of life, you don't have to worry about what's going to happen in the next 5 years with my platforms or with my infrastructure. It has to be future proof. So we'll take care of that together with you. We make sure it's enterprise grade with all of the top notch support that you need. It's going to run on an enterprise scale, making sure that we just don't pick the solutions that we deliver to you. We pick them and we give them to you because this is what we think is best because of your requirements. And we want to be able to make sure that we're also very agile. It's an infinite pay-per-use model, meaning you just consume what you need. At the end of the day, we will also provide you with that 100% fully managed services, meaning you don't have to worry about who's going to manage this, who's going to manage that. We will manage, support, and deliver everything to you based on your requirements. Okay, so with Sans, our future-ready services for the digital enterprise, as we call it, revolves around four key aspects of your IT infrastructure or your services for technology. Number one, first, we want to be able to give you a complete, fully scalable, elastic, and a cloud-like infrastructure, whether you be on the edge, on-premise, or even on cloud. So you have the infrastructure. What's next is you have to protect the data that's actually inside that infrastructure. So we also provide you with the capabilities to safeguard your critical data through providing with recovery, observability, and at any point archiving if you need those also. Third on the list, you see here, with the advances of the technology and how fast we want to be able to meet the consumer, is we provide you with the platform services that tackle speed, scalability, and your process to help you modernize those legacy platforms or those legacy services that you also have, or trying to deliver, different services for the consumers at a faster scale. And number four, of course, is to help you also deliver those services, if ever you need also those, is to efficiently utilize our services together with your knowledge and together with your process to re-architect those legacy applications or trying to deliver you or trying to help you modernize your applications to make it more future-proof and future-ready. Okay, so as the saying goes, we want to keep it very open, very agile, very um, plug and play, very consumption based. So at any point of the service that you want to acquire, right? So we have services from the infrastructure to your data protection to your platforms to your data and even to application services, right? So depending on what you need, depending on your infrastructure or what you actually want, we can cater to any types of environments, whether that be an on-premise approach, whether that be bare metal, virtual, or even on cloud, or even on a hybrid number of databases, different applications, different services, whether that be on a bare metal or a container, we can help you deliver those to our managed services. So at any point you want to start with something, for example, you want to start with the storage, so we'll give you that storage with very minimal capacity investment. So we charge you with one-time charges for that one. But that's pretty much it. So that's pretty much services for you. And then everything else will be consumption based. So in the event that you want to add compute or platforms or database, you just give us a call. We'll prep up what you need based on your requirements. We'll deliver it to you as well. So it's think of it as a Lego block. So at any point you start with a base platform, you add your Lego bricks, you add the doors, you add the roof, you add everything else. So it's pretty much the same thing. We want to keep it very flexible, very scalable for the consumers also, and for the customers also to consume and acquire at any point of your requirements. Okay. So with Sandz, we just wanted to make sure we highlight that we focus on four main key areas: people, process, technology, and of course service. So we give you the capabilities and we make sure that the people you work with are highly skilled engineers, highly skilled individuals. They're top of the grade. They make sure that they know their craft and they will support you and give you the recommendations that you need at any point of the day. We follow a strict SLA processes where we make sure that everything that we deploy and we deliver to complies with your business processes, complies with what you actually require and what we actually expect us to deliver to you. And we give you future-proof technologies. So we make sure and we will always reiterate that when you subscribe to our services, you don't worry about end of life. You don't worry about end of service life. We will take care of the technology that we deliver to you. We will take care of the upgrades. We will take care of any patches, any changes, or any replacements. If and only if that technology will, somehow sunset and not be able to be commercially used anymore. But all of our solutions are 100% future-proof, so you don't have to worry about that one as well. And we value our services to our customers. So we deliver based on our service level agreements. We make sure that you're happy and satisfied with our service. We give you that 100% SLA operations at any point of the day. So 24/7, 8x5, 365 days by year. We will support you at any point of your business standpoint once you subscribe to our services. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Thank you for your time, and I'll turn you back over to Mimi. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ken, for sharing the modernization solution of Sandz. This will definitely enable our clients to keep up with the changing business environments. So again, reminder to everyone, if you have questions, feel free to drop them on the chat box and we'll get to them during the question and answer portion later. You can also send a private chat to any of our hosts. Okay, so without further ado, from one technology expert to another, I'll hand you over to my favorite, Mr. Dennis Shea, for the future of data services for the digital enterprise. Hi, Dennis. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Sorry, this seems like a very long title, but I think this topic will be really important to everyone. A big thank you for everyone for taking your time out. I know everyone's doing Zoom non-stop and really appreciate you all taking the time off to understand what is the future of data services, right? Especially as we go through this whole transformation. I think we have seen this joke, almost everyone has seen this joke, right? I think the whole the whole biggest driver for digital transformation is nothing more than COVID, right? So there's never been more truth in the joke than this, in my personal view, right? Especially for the Philippines, right, where we are going through multiple lockdowns and things like that. And I think the main thing is we actually have numbers to prove, right, from the perspective of what's happening with COVID. Around Asia Pac itself, digital transformation has gone up digital adoption has gone up by 4 years. So no CEO, no CIO is able to drive that adoption faster than a virus. So I think this is the fact of the matter, right? And even from the perspective of digital payments, right, between last year and this year, you can see the total revenue itself is quite substantial. We're talking about 10.52 billion, right, going through digital payments itself. And the changes in terms of the consumer adoption for all things digital. So I think, as we said, when the moment you talk about digital, is all about software, right? So generally, every single company that we know is really focusing on how to deliver more value using software, right? From the perspective of how businesses are being conducted, right? So we can see, right, from the way we eat, to the way we live, to the way we commute, and also to the way we buy, right? I think as I'm speaking to you now, I'm actually sitting at my home waiting for my lunch later on, right? And everything is done digitally. So from the things we buy to whatever that we are doing in our life now, since we can't move around, so we have to empower the digital media, right, to conduct, to carry on with our lives. So what we are starting to see is everything that can be optimized with software will be, right? I think this is what every single organization is going through, right? And the beauty about software is a little bit like boxing, right? It's not about how big you are, really, right? It's really about how fast you are. And I think the best example of a fast beating the slow, right? That was how Amazon started, right? Nobody expect Amazon to be where they are today. And they are really competing based on software itself. And this is exactly the same the same challenge that every single enterprise is looking at. How can I be the next Amazon, right? How can I be faster than my competitor? So I think the needs for every enterprise to start looking at how they build and how they run their software, right, along with their infrastructure becomes key. And I think from the perspective of execution, I think there is 3 major push, right? Really, we keep hearing this. How do I improve my time to market? How do I quickly deliver values faster, right? We can see it happening with the telco, with the retail space, right? How can I use software to elevate my business, make it easier for customers to buy my products, even for government, the ease of doing business? I think, how do we start doing that? And but at the same time, as we start doing more and more software, it becomes very important to say, how can I also, as I use software more, how can I reduce the cost? I mean, in the past, when we only have software governing operations itself, is a bit easier, but now software is governing every aspect. So the need to really reduce the cost and improve the speeds become important. And at the same time, how do I reduce the risk itself, right? So there are a few areas that we are starting to see, right? Customers are expecting, right, digital services to be always on. I think there's an intent to say, hey, how can we quickly speed up the rate of change, and how quickly can we run it anywhere that we want, right? In case my hardware don't get delivered, how can I speed up the consumption of software on every possible imaginable medium itself? And from the cost perspective, obviously people are moving from traditional licenses that are very expensive, and they are looking to see how can I reduce the cost, right? Based on pay-as-you-go model. So that's why I think what Ken was saying becomes very relevant, right, in today's world. And more importantly, also, how do I prevent locked-in, right? So we've been through various cycles where certain vendors, you're locked into certain vendors, and then you're whole hostage, right? From the perspective, the old locked-in was the traditional vendors, the new locked-in is the cloud vendors, right? So this is what's happening now. So a lot of customers are trying to say, how can I maintain neutrality, vendor neutrality, so that I have a choice, right? To run on any infrastructure that I want to run on any manner that I wanted to, right? And obviously with this whole focus on software, people are focusing on how do I build things faster. They are starting to look at microservices, cloud native. They're starting to do a lot of app modernization in order to speed up the way we deploy software, right? So as you start looking at new ways of building software, you realize people are decomposing the way they build software, and you're running them as individual independent units called microservices, right? So as they start doing this, they realize along with that, they have a challenges in terms of every single app will need database. And from the perspective, the way you start decentralizing your software model has a ripple effect in terms of how you are running your other services and your infrastructure. And this becomes a big challenge for everyone. When you start running software in the modern world because you want to run faster, you tend to try to build them as independent modules. And as a result, you are seeing more and more software to be managed, and you're seeing more and more data services to be managed. After a while, it becomes something that's going to be a big, big problem in the near future. So we do have one customer that used to run only one application, or what we call a monolith. They decided to modernize their software, and it becomes 5 microservices. And then they start realizing, because I'm running 5 microservices, each microservices will need 3 databases, right? One for primary, one for HA, one for DR. And it becomes from 3 databases, it becomes 15 databases that they need to manage. So these are problems that customers are starting to face, right? So they need to have a simpler way to look at how they're going to do app modernization along with their data services that's supporting the applications in the future. And obviously, the most important part being database, right? Because database is the heart and soul of the company. It manages the transaction, it manages to make sure all the customers' interactions are being stored, right? And this is something that every single customers are starting to put focus on, right? And from the perspective of traditionally building it, we tend to do it in a very systematic way. We have one database, or the HA database, then we have a DR database, right? And then we have to think about how do we do replications, how do we do failover, how do we test our DR plans, how do we manage our RPO, RTO. These are very manual and very, very highly orchestrated kind of things. And as we start moving towards the new model of building software, we start realizing this is no longer sustainable. Used to be able to do it for one application, but if you multiply by 10 folds or 20 folds or 30 folds, I think most organizations will realize that they can't hire armies of DBAs. And the same DBA can't be working 24/7. And they can't have a situation where, you know, things may potentially fail, right? Because of misconfiguration or because of the fact that we need to plan around it. And the cost implied in the paying for replications, ensuring HA becomes an overwhelming cost item for any organization itself. And this is what we are seeing in terms of the trends, right, and challenges as we move towards a software-driven company, right? So number one, I think customers are starting to look at cloud. They're starting to think about private cloud, which they are running currently. They're starting to think about public cloud. So how they match the best of both worlds, right? Where I can rely on public cloud for certain services, running certain applications, at the same time helping with my DR strategies, right? So this is becoming a norm for almost every single customers. They're starting to think about, how do I do pay as you go? How do I manage elasticity? So with the modern world, it's hard to predict workloads. It could be a very popular software that's used by 1 million people. It could be a very popular software that's used by 10 million people. And as they start doing microservices architecture, they need to think about, how do we scale independent microservices based on what you need. You can no longer size based on max, because it's really expensive and there's no way to size it anyway. So they are starting to think about, how, since I have cloud economics, how do I sort of facilitate that capability, right? We can do that in software now, but we can't really do that in database, right? If we ask any of our customers, how are you able to ensure your database can scale up and down without any downtime, without any major changes? Most of our customers are actually having challenges, especially when I'm scaling primary data center, HA, and DR all at the same time, right? Across clouds. And obviously, because of cost, everybody wants to run everything on active mode, right? So this is going to be the norm. We no longer can allow wastage. We no longer can allow a cold standby, right? Just for the purpose of failover. It's going to be a very costly affair, right? And Obviously, as we start thinking about clouds, as we start thinking about multi-cloud, as we start thinking about hybrid cloud, unified operations becomes key, right? We can't have different people operating on different procedures, different models across on-prem, across cloud, across different clouds. So the whole idea of uniformity becomes important. And this has been the same for containers platform. This is starting to come on board, right, in terms of the data services that customers are running. And in Philippines itself, I believe, as long as you use cloud, every single execution will be a cross-geo execution because there's no cloud vendors within the Philippines itself, unless you're doing private cloud, right? So the moment you say, I run my on-prem, the moment I want to consume AWS or Google or Azure, it will be a cross-geo kind of a setup. And people will will start needing to think about, how do I handle cross-geo data transfer? How do I handle cross-geo management itself, right, from the perspective? And obviously, with digital services, data services needs to change accordingly, right? Now, I need to make sure that I have a highly available, resilient kind of a setup at the lowest possible cost. I think this is something that's affordable if you're running one application with synchronization software, HA and all those things, and active passive. But the moment you are multiplying this by 10 times to 100 times, then obviously cost becomes a big concern for every single organization. They want the highest level of nice at the lowest possible cost. So it's no longer something that you can stitch up. It has to be something that has been built in from day one. And how people are looking at the data services perspective is people are starting to embrace open source. I think we're starting to see that in the cloud vendors. If you look through any database services that you're consuming off the cloud, you realize it's either Postgres, MySQL, you look at even the streaming services, those are all open source. And I think this is becoming the way forward, not just because of cost reasons, but because of the way open source is developing. It's driving the momentum for integration, it's driving better secure software, it's driving ease of consumption, it's driving independence in terms of locked-in. And we're starting to see this happening in the database world especially. Every single new app that we are seeing, most of them are built on open source database technologies. And in terms of how we are evolving this whole storyline, you can see that there's a whole lot of considerations now than before, right? When you're building your data services, especially in the digital age, you need to think about, how do I handle all these things that I talked previously? How do I handle multi-cloud? How do I do hybrid? How do I do scale up? How do I do cross-geo? How do I do no downtime patching? How do I do DevOps integration? How do I do low latency, high performance user response, right, for systems of engagement? How do I do native container integration? So those things don't come out of the box in the traditional databases, as we can see, right? For example, Oracle, a company that I used to work for, I can't run Oracle across any cloud. Oracle runs best on Oracle. On-prem maybe, but if I say, let's take Oracle and run a single cluster of Oracle across multiple cloud, it is impossible. Amazon itself, right? I think if we need to do it by scale across cloud, same problem, right? So Amazon Aurora only exists in Amazon, right? Same for DynamoDB, right? So people say, oh, let's adopt a scale architecture because I do cloud native. But then SQL supports become a problem. It's the same for Mongo, right? Because people are looking for scale architecture, they are going for elasticity, but at the same time, they achieve that at the expense of SQL support. So there is a lot of compromises that's happening, right? As people are scaling out their apps where they need flexibility, they need resiliency, they need to have a scale architecture, they need infrastructure independence. And this is, I think, how Yugabyte was actually formed, right? Just a bit of history. And the founders of Yugabyte were actually Oracle pioneers. So they spent a lot of time in Oracle. And they also spent a lot of time in Facebook solving a problem that we are trying to solve now. How do I solve the problem of scale? How do I solve the problem of elasticity, where Facebook was moving from a few millions to 1 billion of users? And I'm sure Philippines contributed a big part of that because you're the #1 social media capital of the world. So they were solving that problem and they developed a database called Cassandra. So it's one of the early pioneers of NoSQL to allow you to do scale up, to handle transactions itself. And this is how the context of Yugabyte was formed, right? How do I solve a transactional issue using a scale architecture where customers don't have to care about resiliency design, they don't have to care about scaling problems, operational problems, patching problems, and the need to run it on any imaginable infrastructure itself. So they actually create Yugabyte with the context of merging the best of two worlds. The worlds of SQL, where you have a lot of ecosystem, you have very complex query features, but at the same time, the world of NoSQL, where you literally have the ability to do scale up and distributed transactions for full resiliency, and you have data replication capabilities. So Yugabyte was built on the basis of this. And what they did was they basically built a distributed file system called DocsDB to handle the operational challenges that you face. How do you do data partitioning and distribution? How do you do data consistency? How do you do data replication? How do you manage around auto data recovery when infrastructure fails? So this was what they have done, along with making sure that users can use it easily, right? So they built a top layer using Postgres, a bottom layer using a distributed kind of technology. So now basically what you see in Yugabyte is a Postgres compatible database that is fully distributed, that literally will do auto recovery, that will never die, that will allow you to run across multiple clouds as a single database. And this is something that almost every single digital organizations are looking for as they go on to the cloud journey, where they want elasticity, they want availability, they want the benefits of cloud, but they don't want to plan and operationalize around it. So this is what we do. So we have two APIs, one based on Postgres and one based on Cassandra, which is a NoSQL kind of a database. So basically any customers who wants to run Postgres on a very enhanced basis, they can use Yugabyte. And any customers who are using Cassandra, but they want SQL and ACID compliance and consistency, they can also use Yugabyte itself. So the whole idea for Yugabyte was really centered around open source. So this is a 100% open source database. So Filipinos are really embracing open source in a big way. So basically it means you can literally use it for free if you want to. So it's 100% open source. All the features that exist in the enterprise edition exist in open source. So literally you can experiment and sort of modernize your data services using this approach. And at the same time, obviously it can run across any cloud. So when we say across any cloud, meaning one single database instance running across multiple clouds. So it's not one database here, one database there. And it's really built for high resiliency, literally fault tolerant. So designed in the right way, your database will never die, it will never fail, even if your entire data center goes. It's designed for cross-geo distribution of data, so synchronizations are all handled in. It's designed for a scale architecture where you can scale up and scale down without any downtime. It's designed for full ACID transactions, which is very suitable for modern transaction services. And of course, it's designed to be highly secured. So these are just some of the examples where we have customers running off multiple clouds, handling large amount of data. So for X-Ignite, we are doing about 14 billion requests per day. I think that's more than enough to handle any transactions that you're trying to do. And from the perspective of the offering itself, as I mentioned, we have the community support version, which is 100% open source. You can download and try it. We have a supported version with Yugabyte platform that we provide a layer of automation and GUI for you to manage across multiple cloud. You'll see that in a demo in a short while. And if you like cloud and you like what you see in the cloud vendors, we also have a fully managed cloud version where you don't have to do anything. We give you an API, you just consume as you go. So this is something that is really changing the whole industry of how they are modernizing their data services as they go towards digitization. You want to try it on your own at no cost. You want to run it across multiple cloud with automation, or you just want to consume it off the cloud and don't have to care about the infra cost and anything else. So from the perspective of deployment, I can show you some examples of how flexible this is going to align to the way people are running their infrastructure. So they can run it across 3 different regions. That means 3 data centers or 3 cloud regions. They can run it across hybrid cloud. They can run it across a single region in the cloud with multiple zones. They can run it in a single cloud with multiple regions, meaning one in US, one in America, one in UK, and one in Asia. Or you can run it across multiple cloud with multi-regions. So this is pretty much satisfy every imaginable kind of configurations that people are looking at to deploy their data services, right? For digital services. And from the perspective, we are starting to see adoption of and changing of the model, right? In various use cases. One is obviously database modernization. I just want high resiliency without the complexity of managing it. As people move away from traditional Oracle or MySQL or DB2 or Microsoft SQL over to this model, or as people start building cloud native architectures, which allows them to build it and run it anywhere, as people start doing Azure distributed apps, right, where they want to do multi-region, multi-cloud, or as people start looking at IoT and streaming workloads, which is high volume and high intensity kind of workload itself. So I'll take a break now. I think seeing is actually believing, right? So I'll allow Vish to do a quick run through of how it looks like in actuals, and he'll show you live, right, how this thing can be done. Yeah, thanks, Vish.
Hey, thanks, Dennis. Hey, good morning, everyone. Again, I'll just keep it short. Like what Dennis said, nothing beats seeing a product in action. Dennis did talk about hybrid is the new norm. And what you're seeing here is the Yugabyte platform, which is a software DBaaS, meaning this is a piece of software that you could install on either private cloud or a public cloud, and you are going to have a much more easier way in terms of managing the day 2 operations. Now, probably some of you might have questions around what is DBaaS, right? Like if you look into any traditional databases like Oracle, SQL Server, any of this, they are not truly automated in the sense where they don't take the same approach that the cloud computing or the hyperscalers take, likes of AWS, likes of Google or Azure. How do you provision databases on the go? How do you, without having to worry about setting up every time VMs or physical infrastructure, installing software and all of that? And how do you handle the whole administrative tasks and maintenance tasks and all of that, right? So that is exactly what the specific UI simplifies the overall day 2 operations. Based on our experience talking to various customers, setting up a database, if an app team comes and says, hey, I need a database, it takes at least anywhere between 3 to 6 weeks for a database to be up and running. Again, they'll have to raise a ticket, they'll have to go get a VMs provision, then the database needs to be installed, someone needs to run some tests around it. It's very complicated and very labor-intensive tasks, right? Manual tasks. So once you get into Yugabyte platform, again, even though you're seeing here portal.dev.yugabyte, you could, once you run it, you put a domain name to it. Once you, this runs in a specific one VM, and once you have it, you go to the configuration, cloud provider configuration. Dennis did talk earlier about we can run this across any cloud of your choice, whether it's VMs, whether it's physical infrastructure, whether it's Kubernetes. It doesn't matter for us, right? We'll be able to support various deployment architectural patterns. So you could see here, so basically what I'm doing is when I go into any of these specific, once I enter the credentials for any of this, it is basically registering that certain cloud provider, and it doesn't create any VMs or anything along, of that sort. It just basically you're registering the credentials, right? Once this step is done, the second thing is, again, backup, right? Obviously, a database requires backup is super important. Again, depending on where you would intend to run your databases, you might want to run some of your dev instances on AWS, and you might want to run your production on-prem. So you could define the storage layer for AWS to be S3, or you could even write that to network file system. So you define, again, different storage configurations where you could back up this data, right? And once the backup is written to these storage locations, you can integrate with your standard backup tools that you've already invested into. Security becomes really critical for a database. How do you encrypt your data when it is on the disk? And how do you encrypt the data while it is on transit? So we provide all this. So the first step is, once you go into this cloud provider config, you can define your infra, you can define the backup where you want to back up the data to, and you can define the security, right? Once this is done, I'm going to click on dashboard. And in the dashboard area, what I'm going to do is I'm going to press on this button called Create Universe. So what Create Universe actually means is, really think of it like a database instance that I'm going to create. And this database instance is where I'm going to write my create tables, write data, and so on and so forth, right? Now, what you see here on the screen is there are so many such database instances. Think of, in your case today, you might have these databases that you're managing independently. Like, for example, you might have Postgres, you might have Oracle, you might have SQL Server, DB2, maybe Cassandra, MongoDB, all these various databases, right? The runbooks for each of these databases is very different. And at the same time, in terms of managing the operations is very different. So all that gets simplified with this, right? We provide both, Dennis did talk about two APIs, right? We can run both SQL workloads and NoSQL workloads with one common storage layer. What you are seeing here is, it is saying here, you have total of 41 database instances, which is running in a total of 116 nodes. And the total cost per month for all of these instances is about $13,000, right? So if I were to go click on Create Universe, let's say I'm going to define a name to this, YB Sandz. And earlier I defined all the cloud provider configs. I am going to pick, let's say, AWS as the cloud provider. Now it will automatically show me all the regions that I configured on AWS. I can now say, I want to run in just Singapore. So if I just click one region, it will automatically pick 3 availability zones, meaning they're running on 3 different data centers: Southeast Asia 1, Southeast Asia 1B, and 1C. So in a traditional database deployment, you will have a primary data center where you're deploying your database, and you have a secondary or a DR site where you are synchronizing the data from your primary data center to your secondary data center. All of this happens in an asynchronous fashion. In here, what we are talking about is this whole thing is completely synchronous. I have one server running in one data center, other server running in another data center, and the third one running in a different data center. This is all synchronous, right? Which is the key thing. So this is now a single region with multiple availability zones. Now I can go in and say, I want to run this across multiple regions, right? I am going to define Sydney. So once I define multiple regions, again, I have each data center, I'm picking up one node. And I have, like, for Singapore, I have Southeast Asia 1A. For Sydney, I have 2A. And then for Tokyo, I have Northeast 1C. Meaning all of this is running again as one single cluster, and everything is synchronous. Once you write the data gets written not just to one location, the data gets written to all the 3 locations, and it is all synchronous. So at any given time, if Singapore goes down or Sydney goes down, I have 0 data loss, and my application still continue to serve the user request coming in from the application, right? So The other thing is I have replication factor 3. What that means is whatever data I'm writing to Singapore, I'm replicating to Sydney and Tokyo. And whatever I'm writing in Sydney gets replicated to Singapore and Tokyo, and so on and so forth, right? So what that means is a node failure doesn't cause any data loss, right? And in terms of the config, the point is you can see here we have different types of configurations. So we can select 8-core machine, and in future, if I want to change it to a 16-core, I can easily change it, right? There is a storage layer, and I can define which database version I want to run on, and I can just go ahead and click on create. The moment I click on create, it will automatically create the VMs across all these various regions, and it will install the software for me, and it will do all the basic testing to see whether the database is completely operable, right? So all of this happens within few clicks, right? You don't have to wait, in a traditional way where you're manually deploying things and so on and so forth. The other thing that I want to show, let's go into one of the existing databases that instances that already are that is running. So I said earlier, zero downtime. Generally, if you talk about database upgrade, there is a downtime. Here, what I can do, because I'm running on a 3-node architecture, I can just say, I want to run to the latest version. This is my latest version. Go ahead and upgrade. But I want you to do an upgrade in a rolling fashion. If I click on upgrade here, then what it does is it will upgrade node by node. While one node is getting upgraded, the application or user requests are being served by 2 other nodes. So it does in a rolling fashion. So that way you have zero downtime for your application. And if I were to click on the edit universe, let's say I'm running on Oregon. I'm running now on Oregon. I'm now expanding my operations to Singapore, and I'm expanding my operations to Sydney. I can now horizontally scale by adding 2 more nodes, by 2 more regions, and I can even vertically scale. So I'm running now on a 4-core machine with 8 GB. I can go ahead and say, I want, instead of 4-core, I want you to run on 16-core, and I can just click on save. What it does is, earlier my database was running on just US West region, and all my data is in US West Oregon. It will automatically take that data, and now it then distributes this to Singapore and Sydney, and it will automatically change my VM configuration from 4-core to 16-core. And all of this happens with zero downtime for your application, right? We use certain techniques and mechanisms to be able to do all of these processes on the fly while the user requests are being served. And it also acts as an auditing tool, right? So whatever happens on this specific clustered on this platform, meaning I'm creating new databases, I'm trying to upgrade database versions, I'm trying to scale my databases, I'm trying to reboot certain nodes, and whatever I do, all of this is tracked here. This becomes an auditing tool as well, where it captures every log that you need. And you can, at a universe level or at a whole platform level, I can pick, let's say, this specific universe. I can go into metrics. I can see the most comprehensive dashboards that is needed. We have integrated this with things like Grafana and Prometheus and so on and so forth. So it provides you with a comprehensive monitoring capabilities. It provides you with all the backup capabilities. It has all the proactive health checks, right? Every few minutes, it does check. So every 10 minutes, it does check proactively. All the nodes are available, whether the storage is available, whether there are any dump files, and it sends an email automatically to make sure that the database is truly operational, right? So it no longer becomes like once someone observes it, then they're reacting on it. This becomes more of proactive. It triggers alerts. It will trigger the alerts to your central monitoring tools. All that integration capabilities are all built into the platform, right? So with that, I just want to make sure that there are many more features to this, but at a high level, this is exactly what the platform has to offer in terms of simplifying the day-to operations, how you manage and monitor your current databases in a much more automatic way. And it allows you with all that scalability so that the developers and business can focus on providing better customer experience for the users through the digital apps that are getting built. That, thanks, and I'm passing the baton to Mimi.
Okay, thank you, Vish and Dennis, for that very comprehensive discussion and demonstration. If anyone would be interested for a more detailed solution demo, please feel free to contact any of Sandz representative. Okay, so now that you've heard how Yugabyte can help business in their modernization journey, let's go to the exciting part. We will be having a quiz break to give out a few prizes to our participants. The mechanics are very simple. We'll be asking a total of 5 questions based on the presentations given by Ken, Dennis, and Vish. Okay, so the first one to submit the correct answer in the chat box will get a gift voucher from Sandz. So we will place a marker after every question so we can easily track the answers. Okay, so the first question is, what is Sandz Managed Services offering for database? A, infrastructure as a service, B, platform as a service, C, database as a service, or D, data protection as a service? Okay, so who is the first one who typed the correct answer? Sorry, I can't see it in the chat box. Ange? Well, the correct answer is C. And the first one who gave the correct answer is Mr. Eric Dave Daniel. Okay. So thank you, Sir Eric. Okay, the next question is, true or false? We can only use Sandz database as a service for private cloud. Is it true or false? The correct answer should be false. Okay, so the first one who gave the correct answer is, still Mr. Eric Dave Daniel. So perfect si Sir Eric, ha? Nakikinig talaga. Okay, let's move on to the third question. You can deploy Sandz database as a service for the following platforms: A, traditional, public, on-premise; B, traditional, private, public; C, private cloud, colo, DR site; D, none of this. Okay, so the correct answer is B, traditional, private, and public. So we have a new winner. Mr. Nuvert Ayan Averion got it right first. So congrats, Sir Nuvert. Let's move on to our fourth question. Okay, what is the technology powering Sandz database as a service? A, PostgreSQL, MariaDB, or Yugabyte database? Okay, let me check who got it right first. So the correct answer is C, Yugabyte DB. Okay. So namali yata ng type C, Sir Nuvert, it's V. It's actually Mr. Amiel Pastrana who got it right first. Okay. So congrats, Sir Amiel. We expect your prize from Sandz Marketing. Okay, the last question. What kind of database is Yugabyte? Is it Hadoop database? Is it B, distributed SQL database, C, cloud database, or D, normal database? Okay, question 5. Let me check. Okay, so the correct answer is B, distributed SQL database. So the first one who got it correct is Mr. Jojo Castro. Okay, So congratulations, Sir Jojo. So thank you for all those who participated in our quiz. Expect our marketing team to get in touch with you anytime soon for you to claim your prizes. Okay, we will be probably extending some few more minutes, so we'll just ask for your patience. So please bear with us. Before we proceed to the closing part of the event, let me bring back to you Mr. Ken Chan for some final announcements about Sandz Yugabyte's offering. Ken?
Thank you, Mimi. Hold on. Okay, so you've heard Mr. Shen presented about Yugabyte. So we'd like to just give a quick glance on what our database services has to offer. So we call this data platform services. So it's powered by Yugabyte. So you can actually spin off a distributed SQL or a PostgreSQL-like SQL or even a NoSQL database. So our database as a service is 100% open source, meaning you just subscribe to our database as a service, use it, whether it be on a private data center together with our infrastructure as a service or your traditional servers and compute storages for that one, or even on public cloud. So we have our public cloud offering also powered by Zadara. So, but you can also spin it off with AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, or use it on top of an OpenStack platform, VMware, or even run it on top of a container. So our Sandz database as a service, we can deploy it on your traditional infrastructure. So it's going to be a bit of a self-managed, and or you can either subscribe to our Sandz services for that one so that we can manage it for you. You can also subscribe to our private database as a service where we bring in the infrastructure, the storages that you need. And it can be a fully or semi-managed service with the 24/7 proactive support and all of those subscription and SLAs that we talked about earlier in the webinar. And third, of course, you can also do a public database as a service, again, powered by either our Zadara platform, or you can use AWS, Azure, or even Google Cloud. So we can also do fully managed services on top of that one with the same 24/7 support and SLAs together with that one. At any point of your requirements, you can deploy fully multi-cloud database strategies. So if you want to start off with the traditional deployments and then eventually do a public cloud offer, we can help you set it up, configure those, and make it sure it's running efficiently for you. If you have workloads also from different database platforms that you're currently exploring, migrating out, or complementing your existing stack, don't hesitate to give us a call. We have experts also within Sandz that can help you migrate and understand how to properly maximize the database as a service on an open source platform and convert your existing enterprise services towards this database. All right. So just a quick announcement, and maybe a seamless plug before I hand you over back to Mimi. So if you have any use case in mind, don't hesitate to try it with Sandz. So we have, and we're launching what we call our Sandz Innovation Lab. It's sitting inside our data center with an infrastructure as a service offering. So at any point you want to spin off a database, give a trial. We offer a 90-day free trial to anyone who's attending in this call or any of our customers who wants to try out Yugabyte and our database as a service. Try it out, explore. If you have use cases in mind you want to try out, just simply contact any one of our sales agents or sales experts here in the call or after this webinar, and we'll get in touch with you with the schedule and try to understand what your requirements and where we can actually help you. All right, so that's pretty much it for me. I turn you back over to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. So I'm pretty much sure everyone is excited to try your demo. So, but before we sum up everything, we'll just play a quick video.
Modern cloud applications need to support users worldwide. This has forced organizations to rethink how and where to distribute data. Developers of these applications require a database that is fast, supports transactions, and can scale up or down without incurring downtime. This has led organizations to deploy multiple SQL, NoSQL, and caching databases to meet their technical requirements. The result of this database sprawl has led to increased costs, more complex operations, and slower feature velocity. What if there was a database that could help you consolidate by delivering high-performance transactional NoSQL and planet-scale SQL in a single system? Say hello to Yugabyte DB, an open-source database created by the engineers who built and scaled Facebook's NoSQL platforms. With our proven sharding and replication architecture, you don't have to choose between consistency, availability, or performance. When compared to NoSQL systems like Cassandra, Yugabyte DB is 3 times faster at consistent reads and can deliver 6 times the data density per node. Traditional RDBMSs support ACID transactions, but even these systems cannot deliver distributed transactions or global data distribution without complicated replication architectures. Yugabyte DB can do all of this and more, supporting JSON documents, distributed ACID transactions, and secondary indexes. Yugabyte DB is purpose-built for global data distribution, automatically rebalancing nodes across availability zones or geo-distributed regions up or down without downtime or performance bottlenecks. And because Yugabyte is multi-API and multi-cloud, it's compatible with PostgreSQL, Cassandra, and Redis and can run in any cloud, container, or data center. Ready for a database that can reduce costs, simplify operations, and help deliver projects faster? Visit us online to learn how.
Okay, thank you. So we are now at the tail end of the event, but before we end this morning session, we would like to open the floor now for any questions from our participants. So feel free to type in the chat box, and we'll have our tech experts to answer it live. Do we see some questions in the chat box? You can also send your questions privately to me or any of the Zoom hosts here. Or you can click your raise hand button. Okay, so I think there are some private questions sent. First question is, if I subscribe to Sandz database as a service, do I only get the database functionalities or even the other components such as infrastructure, backup, etc.? I think this one should be best answered by Ken.
Hi, morning. Okay, so depending on what you subscribe, so if you subscribe to our private database as a service, so we'll also bring in the infrastructure together with the database as well. So if you subscribe to the public cloud, you get the database with, of course, with the infrastructure because it's in cloud, but you primarily have access to the database only. So depending on what you acquire, we can actually search it up for you as well. I hope I was able to answer. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. So another question here is, can I use my own choice of cloud and have it managed by Sandz?
So I guess that's me again. So yes, we can also co-manage your own public cloud offering depending on how you're going to subscribe to our database as a service.
Okay, so this one is a more difficult question. Since Yugabyte can be deployed either no SQL or SQL, can I start with SQL database and then create a no SQL function and vice versa? I think this will be better answered by Dennis or Vish.
Yeah, the answer is yes. The point is once you install Yugabyte, the 2 APIs are available. It's not like these two are 2 different things where there is a separate installation process. By the time once you install Yugabyte platform, these 2 APIs are available. You can use any of the APIs depending on the need and requirement.
Okay, thank you, Vish. And I think the last question that I have here is, can I have a fully distributed database using Oracle or SQL Server? Dennis, would you like to answer?
Sorry, can you ask the question again?
Can I have a fully distributed database using Oracle or SQL Server?
In Oracle itself, it's not really distributed in nature. So what they did is they do RAC for availability. But if you want to run Oracle across data center, across cloud, you need a magnitude of different components. SQL Server itself is a monolith. It doesn't do distributed. So basically, you can't partition it across data center. You can't run it across multiple cloud as a single instance. So the key difference between distributed and monolith is one, basically distribute the data across multiple nodes by design. Traditional, basically, you need to go and do everything is run within a server, and then you just HA it. Yeah. So there's a clear difference in the way you are running the database itself. So you need to coordinate all the failover, you need to coordinate all the active passive configuration, whereas in Yugabyte, you can see as from which demo, everything is built in. You don't have to think about data synchronization and everything else.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. So on behalf of everyone from Sandz Solutions Philippines and Yugabyte, my name is Mimi Melihor, and we would like to thank you for joining us this morning, and I wish you all a good day ahead. Keep safe, guys. Keep safe, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah.